Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're reviewing for you Star Wars Outlaws on the Nintendo Switch 2. This review was originally written by the lovely PJ O'Reilly and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. We find ourselves in a bit of an unusual position with Star Wars Outlaws on Switch 2, in that PJ has already played through the entire thing and reviewed it for our sister site Pure Xbox in 2024, and as such, it's a good opportunity to see if the 8 out of 10 that it was given was justified. Spoiler alert, it was absolutely justified, so that's good to get that out of the way. When the reviews dropped for Massive Entertainment's take on the Star Wars universe, it's safe to say that not everyone felt exactly the same way as PJ. As good as the Jedi series is, it could be argued that it feels a bit like a sort of a theme park ride that throws all the stuff you expect to see as you careen through at high speed, like climbing and fighting on a big film set, and that's fine. But Star Wars Outlaws has depth to its environs. It's a richer world to inhabit as a character, a more interesting collection of places to explore. Massive Entertainment takes a step back from non-stop flashy Jedi action in all the places you know to give us the down and dirty side of Star Wars. The hucksters, the criminals, the guys with the big long necks who are always in the cantina off their faces on angry bloody rancors, and that's an actual drink. You know the den from the films, the hive of scum and whatever the rest of that sentence was. This is a game about that, and it's about time. With a bit of hindsight, we think we can understand why the game didn't resonate with absolutely everybody. You know, it's not a stunner in the looks department, in particular regard to the character models, and it's not in the same league as modern adventure games. It sticks to tried and tested mechanics, if a little bit old-fashioned in that sense, and K-Vest may not get off to the best start as a character, likable enough as she becomes as things progress. It's also a game that plays differently than how you might expect. It's heavy on the stealthy stuff and sneaking about in crouch mode until you rip your Kessel Runner trousers. You can, of course, pew-pew if you so choose, but this is the game that wants you to take your time in appreciating the world that's been constructed around Kay's core mission, which is essentially to run away from her crimes and get out of the scoundrel lifestyle by putting together a crack team and pulling off a space heist. It's quite the departure from the typical dry pilgrimage to find Jedi powers and find your true feelings, when instead you can rappel up a wall, punch some stormtroopers in the back of the head, and steal all their credits and clothes. And we might as well have all the spare wire and circuit boards you've got hanging around. Thanks, fellas! The game takes place between the events of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which, let's be honest, is a much cooler time period than anything that's happened in Star Wars since. But then again, maybe we're just old men. Kay must pit her wits against the ruthless villain of the piece, the admirably slimy Zarek Besh, and as a leader of a powerful crime syndicate, Besh is after you, and not just because you nicked his spaceship. The fun part here, and the bit that sells it all quite well as a sort of Han Solo simulator of sorts, is that you can play all the syndicates off each other, make them really angry with you, or make them your bestest buddies in the whole world. If you loathe the Hutts, for example, you can absolutely stick the knife in and become their absolute worst enemy, and the game just lets you, which is no bad thing. I mean, have you met Jabba the Hutt? Conversely, you can become their bestest buddy. It's up to you. I mean, you are a criminal at the end of the day. The ramifications for being on the bad side of a syndicate, however, is that their territory becomes much harder for you to work in. So when a future mission requires you to get in there, you may have to sneak through the entire area rather than just sort of, you know, breezing through the bits where they don't mind you being. It makes the game a lot more dynamic and interesting and feel just that little bit more alive. And that's a theme that runs through a lot of what Star Wars Outlaws is doing. Nothing about the gameplay loop here is new or fresh or designed to stun you into heralding the arrival of a brave new era in digital interactivity. No, instead you've got a little bit of Deus Ex, Metal Gear Solid, Dishonored Light, Assassin's Creed kind of vibe going on, a real kind of mishmash in how the world wants you to read and explore, creep around, and make a few decisions on how you proceed. It is 100% not the best at everything it's doing, and that's okay, because what it chooses to do fits Kay, fits the story, and fits the situation. again. There were a few issues at the game's initial launch, mostly due to insta-fail stealth bits, but these have long since been patched out. It feels good to blast folk with the laser rifles and all the cool shooty weapons from the films as well, and not just because they all make the correct sounds. Similarly, it feels just as good to sneak through vents and plot and plans ways to take down entire areas full of bad guys. If you've ever thought, I quite fancy a Star Wars skin on my Assassin's Creed, well, this is reasonably close. We say reasonably close because to compare Outlaws too directly to Assassin's Creed would do it a bit of a disservice. Kay's adventure is, in our view at least, vastly preferable in how it chooses to unveil its world map and how busy it wants to keep you with faffing about and time wasting. It's a roughly 30 to 40 hour story as long as you're not doing just the main quest line, with another 20 abouts on top if you want to do everything that there possibly is. It's very doable, and that's another feather in its cap. Alongside a character that grows into a highly likable one, and a story that keeps things rattling along just fine, this is a very good slice of Star Wars. It feels authentic in ways that the Jedi games just didn't, and it has loads of little fun nods and little bits of lore to find and explore for fans. Away from the core shooting and stealthing about, Kay also has a speeder bike, a grappling hook, and a bunch of other tricks and tools for exploring that come courtesy of her friend Nyx. And if I, Alex, can step in for a moment, I would die for Nyx. The speeder bike though, well, this is where we can finally start discussing what many people will consider to be the most important part of this review, how the game runs on Switch 2. You see, there's a moment in Outlaws that we were all dreading, out of Switch 1 review habit we suppose, where Kay gets on her speeder bike for the first time and the game's first open world area is laid bare for you to zoom around at high speeds. Surely this was where the experience, which had been running perfectly well to this point, would fall apart. And if I know anything about my editing, you will have already seen that it's fine. Indeed, all the reports of poor performance on earlier builds of the game, and even that trailer they showed, were radically different to what we get here, again, as no doubt you've been able to see. This is broadly a stutter-free experience a majority of the time, and it's not that far away from the other versions of the game in the broad looks department. It's also got motion controls, cross-saves, and touchscreen inventory management as well. Oh lordy Lou, is this actually a good port? Who expected this? Does it have a super solid 60 frames a second style of gameplay? No, it does not. It's capped at 30, but broadly it's a very smooth and responsive one, especially when you're indoors, which makes sense. PJ even felt at times that it felt better than 30, no doubt due to the game's motion blur, which I had turned off. I don't like motion blur. I just don't. Motion controls are well integrated, if a little bit buried in the menus. I didn't realize there were even motion controls in the game until I read PJ's review. But there are a wealth of options here, not only for motion controls, which are vast, like absolutely vast, but also just accessibility options, how you play the game, the difficulty. There's loads here, and it's absolutely lovely. So, in summary, Star Wars Outlaws is a great Star Wars game overall. It's a little bit ramshackle in places, a little bit rough around the edges at times in its execution, and it sticks to tried and tested gameplay loops, but that sort of suits the vibe. It suits the setting with its low lives and liars and deadbeats and diehards. It also feels like a moment of sorts for Nintendo's new console. We've been worrying about third-party ports for a while, and with the likes of Demon X Machina not performing quite so well, and reports and the trailer showing this game being an absolute shambles before it arrived, we were absolutely thrilled that this just seems to be a good port. A good port! Third party, this early on the Switch 2. We're chuffed to bits. Star Wars Outlaws on Switch 2 is a very fine port of a solid Star Wars game. Kay vs. Story may overutilize tried and tested gameplay mechanics, it may not bring anything new or hugely exciting to the table, but what it does do is give you a well-crafted world stuffed full of lore through which to explore, sneak, and forge your own path. With solid performance and good looks in both docked and handheld mode, and motion controls and cross-saves thrown in for good measure, this is an easy recommendation for Switch 2 fans of the old Star Wars. Star Wars Outlaws, you're getting an 8 out of 10 from us. You've reached the end of the review. That means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and I'm afraid this game just doesn't gel with me. It's a polished experience and I like the idea. I like the world, which isn't hugely surprising because it is Star Wars. But I just feel like there's all these great ideas, but the execution just isn't quite there for me. I quite like Kay as a character, not outlandishly so, but I just find that from a narrative perspective, she just gets dropped in locations, and immediately everyone's on her like a rash, and they're like, Kay, we need you to do this thing for us, and I get it, it's a video game, but when, like, I was doing some of the early missions, and admittedly, I want to make it clear, I am not that far in the game, I did, like, one job for one person, and immediately the Hutts called me up and they're like, we got some work for you. And it's like, you don't know who I am. How did you find out about this? Why are you offering me work? You don't know you can trust me. I don't know. It just smacks of give a reason for this happening. There was also another instance with like, I needed like an upgrade for my speeder. And I went to this woman. She's like, I don't deal with off-worlders, but I'll deal with you or something. It's like, you're out of options. So she's going to help me. And it's like, you just said you don't deal with off-worlders. You know I'm an off-worlder, and now you're dealing with me. Just make a bit more sense. I also find that the gameplay just isn't really that engaging for me. It's broadly, not always, but broadly very similar. Like, it's the same stuff time and time again. It's go to this place, sneak around, take out a few guards, run away. And that's fine, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't really evolve the gameplay much, or at least it doesn't do much with the stealth mechanics. I like the inclusion of Nix, especially. I mean, he's adorable and I love him, and I think there's some great potential there with, you know, sort of having a secondary character that can do basic things. And yeah, you know, sort of instances where there are two guards, you send Nix over, you know, sort of to deal with one guard, and the other guard gets distracted going, what's that axolotl doing on my friend? And then you pow in the back. That works really, really well. I really like it. But it doesn't go much beyond that. He does have other abilities, like he can distract a camera, but I have a big issue with that. And that's that for the longest time, I didn't know that you can just run through the beam if Nix is distracting the camera. Like, you can just run straight through the camera's field of view and nothing happens. It's like, I think it'd be much more interesting and make much more sense if you could get Nix to distract the camera and, like, make them pan away and look at, you know, look over here so that I could sneak past out of its field of view. I think that would work, but it's more just Nix is distracting and the beam sort of narrows a bit, but you can just run through it. Unless I'm missing something, you just run through it. And yet, you know, sort of, so it narrows, but therefore it's not very clear to the player. As a player, I was like, I can't go through that beam, but you can. So I think it maybe would have made more sense if it focused a little bit more, like changed to like a spotlight over Nix in terms of its field of view, and you have to avoid that bit. I don't know. It feels like I'm nitpicking, but there's just a lot of small things about the game that just don't work for me. I've got to say, though, it is a good port. It is a good port. Kay does look a little bit uncanny at times in terms of, like, a face model. I don't quite know why, but yeah, I think it's her eyes. Her eyes are a bit big and, like, very dark, so it just looks like she's got massive pupils. It's a bit off-putting. I can see why some people like this game and some people don't. It does feel like a game that was kind of born to be divisive. Not by design or anything like that, but just by the fact that there's a lot of old-fashioned game design in here, which is not inherently a bad thing, but, you know, also, it just feels a little bit like missed opportunities for me. A little bit uninspired. I didn't, you know, hate the game by any means, but I'm also just not excited to go back to it, if that makes any sense. But, you know, it's alright.